What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Dalton Piche of Members Media. You can check him out at members.media. And Dalton, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, I had someone on, Kevin Hurrigan. Kevin Hurrigan had an agency, Dalton, since 1995. So it was interesting to hear the landscape of the internet, business, and then the agency world at that time, and then how it evolved. So that was interesting. Another one was from Jason Swank. Jason Swank built up his agency to 8 figures and sold it. Then his next soiree was buying up agencies. And then he has an agency mastermind group where he helps agencies grow. So again, talked about the valuation space, agency space, and that was a very interesting episode as well. Check those out on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Dalton, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, but most importantly, run their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I am excited to introduce Dalton Piche. He's the founder of Members Media. And Members Media is a music marketing platform that delivers over 1 billion streams for its clients annually. Members Media has done work for some of the biggest names in the industry, such as Billie Eilish, Bruno Mars, many more. And Members Media was actually born out of necessity. Dalton was an artist facing the same challenge that so many musicians encounter, which is investing a ton of time into your craft and struggling to get your music heard. And he was frustrated by the lack of effective music promotion options. So he set out to create the solution he wished he had, and he built Members. And Members provides the artists with opportunity to reach new listeners. Dalton, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
How'd I do? That sums it up.
That was great. I think we can wrap it up right there.
Cool. That's it. We're done. Just tell people a little bit about Members Media and what you do. And as you're doing that, there is a video piece. If someone's listening, I'm going to pull up their website and we'll poke around.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think you covered a lot of it there. To unpack a little bit more, when I was making music back in the day, not that it was great, but I think that was a big part of it too, is that I didn't know if it was great. And I wanted some way to get it out in front of more people so I could figure out, is this something that I should be doing or should continue doing? I had a good job. It wasn't even so much of, am I willing to spend money on this? I absolutely was. It was just that there was nothing out there that I felt good about putting money into to actually get some kind of information or data back to say, is this good? Am I happy with this? Do I want to pursue this? Do people like it? Do I have opportunities? So it was really just about, where can I find a place to do that, to get that kind of exposure or that reach or just whatever, just to see what could happen. And I think a lot of musicians are in that same position where they're making music, they think it's good. I thought my music was good. Maybe it was good to some level, but more so about it can't just be me and my friends listening to it. It needed to see the light of day before I could obviously ever make a living or do anything with it. So that was kind of how it started.
I want to hear more about, obviously we were talking before we record, obviously you have independent artists that come on. You can see there's a la carte. People can get things for as little as 249. And then obviously you have more kind of enterprise and you work with labels and things like that. But when you first started, what did the services look like?
Great question. Yeah, it started out actually initially as a website not too dissimilar from this, a lot more simple. We started out doing just playlisting as a service, and it was really, slow to get started, but over time, it actually ended up shifting more into an agency than an a la carte kind of website like this. So we ended up kind of shifting into more working directly with labels and distributors and the larger clients. So for the longest time, that's really how the business kept growing
So you started
was,
out with bigger clients rather than the a la carte, smaller kind of value propositions.
well, we kind of started with the a la carte initially for a short period, and then it quickly shifted into the agency side. I think the harder part of the reason we started with a la carte was, getting into the industry is quite difficult if you don't initially come from that industry, especially with music. It's very gate kept. And so for us, it was just we just didn't really have the bigger clients. We didn't know where to get them. It's all very word of mouth, and it took us a bit of time to build that. But once we did build it, we leaned into the agency side of things a lot more. So the label clients, the distributor clients, bigger songs, bigger projects. And since then, or after doing that for some time, reinvesting into this more a la carte service was a way for us to take all these new services that we built over the years and offer them out to independent musicians. So that's kind of came full circle. This website that you're looking at, actually, we just launched about a month and a half ago. So we had something running before, but it was nowhere near as developed as this.
Yeah, and if for people who are listening, we're on members.media, and what we're looking at is they have music promotion services. Obviously, there's an enterprise thing here, but for artists specifically, we are looking at playlist promotion, offering monthly listener offering, Facebook and Instagram ads, TikTok music, YouTube video promotion. We are talking about popular service, and you were talking about Spotify playlist. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, you're super zoomed in here too. I haven't seen the website this format actually, because I'm usually a lot more zoomed out. But yeah, so playlist promotion, super popular. Reason it's really popular with a direct type offering like this, where there's no agency necessarily involved or account manager, is because everyone knows what it is. Spotify is the largest streaming platform out there, and because of that, it doesn't require as much explanation or understanding for what we do. There's a lot of different companies that offer playlisting services. Um, and that's what's led it to be the most popular. It's what I like about Spotify as a platform, even regardless of the playlisting, is just how much data they make available. Of all the different streaming platforms out there, Amazon, Apple, etc., no one gives as much data to listeners and to the artists as Spotify. And that makes it a lot more, or gives you a lot more control over the entire marketing experience. The more data you can read, the more, you know, optimization you can implement. And I think there's just a lot more freedom for not just us as a company, but also for the artists to be able to read what's happening, how are people reacting, if I'm on this playlist or if I'm doing these types of ads or whatever it might be, being able to quickly make decisions on just what's happening pretty well in real time.
So let's say I'm an independent, you know, band, and I'm like, I can get 10 to 20,000 streams by clicking here and doing the service.
Sort of.
How does it work?
I don't know if there's that little star, that zero risk policy. So our service for playlisting specifically, we can't approve everything. And that's, really the entire process of playlist promotion is we're operating as a middleman between our network of curators. Ultimately, it's up to our curators whether or not they're going to approve music. So we've got this network of curators. They're very picky about what they approve and what they're willing to put on their playlists. For some of them, they are independent labels and they are really just looking to maximize the value of their playlists. For some of them, they do this for a living, curators, that is. And so, yeah, it's super important for them that they're putting good music, high quality music on their playlists. And honestly, that 70% is probably even less now. We're trying to just increase the quality of the music that we work. So, that's the thing is you can purchase a product, you can go through this entire process, and there's a chance we can't help, in which
Yeah.
case it's just immediately refunded
Yeah.
or just cancel. We don't even take the payment. But yeah, that's essentially the idea is that you can pick a product, pick the size you want, submit your music. From there, we'll do the work on the back end, submit it out to our network, and guarantee a minimum reach if you are approved. And that's what the 10 to 20,000 streams is based on,
Yeah.
is us working on your behalf to ensure that we get there if we're willing to take on the campaign.
No, that's pretty cool. I wonder, I haven't seen anything, but if something in like the podcast space exists, that's like per episode, right? Like, hey, this episode with Dalton, that's amazing, and submitting it to get 10,000 streams somewhere. I don't know if that exists. Maybe it does, and I'm just not aware of it. So we'll add that service to here, and then we'll purchase it for your episode.
Sounds
Um,
great.
I imagine people just kept asking you for different things. Is that how these other services kind of came up? They're like, hey, we want to get exposure on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Is that how these other ones cropped up?
Some of them for sure. I mean, TikTok's a big one that, there's a ton of demand for TikTok and Instagram. So naturally, it was just a matter of time for us to try to find the most effective way to get into TikTok, which is, we can chat a bit about that. But for ads, that was more so, we want something that we can scale, that we can bring the highest value experience or kind of marketing to musicians. And that one's, as you can see, it's new, the Facebook and Instagram ads. I would say that is probably the bread and butter of what we do.
Hmm.
It is, without a doubt, any conversation we're having, even on the agency side, with anyone independent or with less than, let's say, 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, that's going to be the service that we're going to suggest because it's just so valuable in what it does and what it can do. Playlisting is great. It serves a purpose. TikTok is great. It serves a purpose while it is very high risk. Ads, you have total control. You're driving high intent fans to your music. There's just a lot of things that you can do creatively to get value out of this service. It's something that we use on our own music consistently. We spend a lot on ads, not just for the business, but primarily for music. And we've just found that it just works so well. So this one was honestly, no one was asking for this. This was just something that we started to play around with because we knew that people, were running ads for music. And we figured that there was probably a more creative way that we could do it. And so it was just a matter of testing, figuring that out, proving it out, and then ultimately offering it. That started about 2 years ago. We started doing this one.
I'm curious, Dalton, what objections you get? Because this kind of seems like a no-brainer. If I'm a artist and I go in, I'm like, oh, cool. I pay $500 and I get 500 conversions. That sounds great. And I just want to say, I know you have a marketing side of the business. You also have a label catalog side of the business. So when you're saying, yeah, we use this, you're using these things for your own label and catalog, I imagine as well. So what are the objections you get from this?
But with that, I mean, each service has kind of its own objections.
Yeah.
Ads, anyone can technically go and run ads themselves. There's a ton of different ways to do it. That's the thing is, when we say conversions, and this is if we want to get really into the weeds on one of these, when we say conversion, we're referring to someone is going to see this ad on Instagram or Facebook. We run all of our ads on Meta for this service, and they're going to hear the song. They're going to see some visual that's going to connect to the song that we've made in-house. They're going to click through. They're going to go to a landing page. From there, they're going to select their streaming platform, their DSP. So they might select Spotify. And that's what we consider conversion. So you can run ads, you can drive traffic, you can send as many bodies to something as you want from any countries in the world. for us, it's tier one countries trying to make it as hard as possible for this person to get to the music so that by the time they do get there, they're incredibly valuable. So I think this service does require a lot of explaining, a lot of explanation. And that's something that we're working on now is a bit more of an in-depth kind of walkthrough. And I'd say for this service specifically, the biggest objection would just be a lack of understanding of
Yeah.
what this actually is, what it can do for you long term.
All right. I guess to me it seems pretty straightforward, but I mean, I don't know. So we have that on the kind of independent side, but then we have the agency side, and we're looking here at some of the case studies. What was a great one, or remember one you remember a good story of how you actually got, because you said it takes traction, for people to get to know you and it's word of mouth. What was a favorite story of how you actually got one of these labels or artists that's fun for you to look back on?
Yeah, I mean, so on the independent side, Oscar Medkay is probably one of the more exciting ones. If not, maybe Baddies Only down low there. So these two are very similar situations. We spent a good amount of time and funds on advertising for these tracks, and you can see a bit of information there on how many conversions we delivered, our average cost per conversion, and just where the song is at today. This song, I believe, is, I'm not mistaken, it's over 60 or 70 million streams in
Oh,
under 2 years. And
it's
it really
wild.
all kicked, yeah, it's done really well. And it really all kicked off from, it's an Adele bootleg, Set Fire to the Rain. So familiar vocals, which definitely helped. But this was like a really, really pristine example of what paid advertising can do. If you get the right people in front of a song at a high volume early on, it'll work magic for the algorithm. And that's that, again, that Facebook and Instagram ad service that we offer. That's what we really pride ourselves on is a strong understanding of the algorithm on Spotify. And like this is just a really good case study to highlight that. And I thought we had pictures of the actual streaming scale, but I guess we don't on this one.
How did they find you?
That one was a referral from someone who found us and wanted something small. I don't actually recall the exact. I remember who brought us the client, but how we got that person and the person before that was just kind of a long-winded trail of referrals.
That's probably how it happens. Um, and then on the agency side, talk about you helped a country artist. Talk about that.
Yeah, super proud of this one. Country artist named Max Noun. He's been blowing up. He's from Oregon, based in Nashville now. If you do listen to country, we don't actually have him on here, but if you do listen to country, you may have heard some of his latest work. A lot more free. He's been doing some big numbers. It's I think done over 100 million streams in the last year across all streaming
Wow.
platforms. And I mean, he's a phenomenal artist. He's literally just getting started. He's going to be a huge star. But for him, I think it was really cool on the
This is
agency
him.
side. Yeah, that's him. On the agency side, it's a lot of fun because, generally, we're working with slightly larger budgets. The quality of music and the quality of artists is quite high. So it's hard to take much credit for the work we do for Max. But if we had to take credit, well, we will. But on some of the stuff, just because I think, there's some things that he just does phenomenally. Like his live performances are just phenomenal. So for us, it was all right. What's already working well? What are people already consuming when it comes to his content or the way his music is being promoted? And how do we just pour gas on that? And that was really the main thing with Max. Is, on the TikTok front, we can get just a lot more in the weeds for agency clients and saying like, okay, your live performance is doing really well. Should we do a reaction campaign where we take that piece of content that's already performing well and get it in front of many, many, many more people? How do we do that? And finding ways to execute that has been a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just there's no limit as to what can happen on the agency side, which is exciting. And anytime we get a client who trusts us and really wants our input, we're gonna give it all we got.
I love hearing Dalton, about your journey when I think of, innovation comes from outside industry. And so if someone's listening, like, I'm not in the music industry or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? I love hearing how you think about things, how you've done things, how you structured offers, how you work with people, because it can apply to any industry. What made you decide to finally go out and be like, I'm going to start a business, right? Because I know you've worked for companies, throughout the years. And what was that decision that you decided to make a leap?
Well, it wasn't the first business I tried to build by any means, but I mean, for the last, I don't know, well into 8 years prior to launching this, I'd tried a lot of different things, and this was, I think, a unique one because COVID had just happened, and always loved music, loved making music, but at a certain point started to realize, okay, maybe I'm not good enough for that, but what am I good at? I've learned a lot in my previous roles. I'd say I'm, you know, pretty well versed in the business side of things, scaling up operations, sales, etc. And it was just, I mean, it was the right time for me and my family. It took a lot of convincing for sure, but once I had enough going on, I think it was really easy to make the transition, and I haven't looked back.
What was something you tried that didn't work? I find sometimes I learn the most
Oh
from
God.
things that didn't work out. And I took a piece of that and took a piece from everything. What do you remember you started that didn't work and maybe something you learned from it that you brought into members media?
There's so many failures that I can't even like it's so hard to even in the business now, it's still just, I mean, every day is just trying so many new things, almost to a fault. Like that's one thing that people on the team will say about me is it's just never ending. The new ideas and the new things that we're trying to do. But I don't, I mean, previously, I think I definitely learned most at my previous role. I worked at a company called Canada Drives. And with that, it was just, I mean, it was just, I think there was some really great leadership there and a lot just about kind of building a business that, again, didn't really matter what industry it was in. It was a lot of work ethic stuff and a lot of just like, thinking about value first. How do we actually provide value? Once you provide value, everything just comes together. And I think that mentality has been key. I don't know that any specific failures have really stuck out as a big eye opener because there's every day there's something learned. And yeah, I hope that's not a bad answer, but
You've repressed it. You're like, I'm not even thinking of all these things. But no, I like what you said about, Canada Drives. You were there for almost 8 years, and I love the provide value first mentality. And it just seems to be that way with, well, at least when I perceive that in some of your offerings on your website, right? You're saying sharing at least the value that someone's getting out of it. Building a team is not easy. But you've had to build a team. You've gone from one to, 18 plus. Talk about the evolution of you and then the hiring.
yeah, happy to. That's probably another good thing to talk about. Canada Drives. I managed a team, a very large team, and it changed over the years. But that skill was probably one of, and even to this day, I think of as one of the most valuable is the interviewing process, the hiring process, the management process. And I'm by no means a perfect manager, but I've been managed and I've managed enough to know a few things and you know even just being a good judge of character in the interview process, I think just pays an infinite amount of dividends. For our team, it's every hire has been so, I mean, we barely am thinking about skill set as much as I'm thinking about fit and work ethic and who is this person, where do they want to go, who they want to be. I mean, skills definitely. I'm not to discredit that. I've got a super skilled team, but it's definitely not the only thing on my mind. It's a lot of things can be trained, but you can't rewrite a person's code necessarily.
from managing a team, what did you learn either at Canada Drives or at Members Media? What are some of the things that you do that you look back on? Maybe something that you learned from being managed that you would never do, or maybe something from a manager that you really liked and you continue to do.
Yeah, lots I learned about from management that I would and would not do. And these are things I still think about often and trying to, be the best I can. But I think like things that, I've enjoyed about management in the past is like the motivation side of things. What are we working towards? Like, let's all get on the same page and let's have some kind of big goals that we're all thinking about and all working in tandem on. So I think about that a lot. What's the next year? What's the next 2 years look like? Not just for the business, but for every single member of the team. And I think that's important. We really try to not use fear or micromanagement. I mean, that's like, some things I learned a lot over the years of Canada Drives. It's like, there was some of that happening, which, in some cases was necessary. But I think in most cases, if you're getting the right people on the bus, you really don't need to micromanage. And I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in is the freedom and the autonomy that we try to give to team members.
What are some of, I don't know if there's certain hiring questions or processes that you find to be valuable, because going from 1 to 18 in a very compressed time frame is not easy. I mean, it's not even easy over a longer time frame. So are there certain hiring questions or process that'd be valuable for people to think about?
Yeah, it's maybe not so much questions, but I think that step one, always trying to figure out does this person feel like the right fit? But then I think an even more important step two is almost trying to like convince them out of the job in a way. When we hire, I don't want someone to quit ever. That's like, so if I can really paint the pictures like, yes, this is the job. It may sound exciting. Yes, you're working in the music industry. Yes, there's some fun stuff involved, but you might send 400 emails a day. You might have some days where you hate me, where you hate what you're doing, where you like that's very much a reality. You're working at home. It can be lonely. Our entire team works from home still. There's a lot of downsides to what we do, and I like to paint those pictures as clear as possible. I don't want someone who's going to come in, half interested or half into this. The value of the music industry is a lot of people want to work in it. So I think we have that as an advantage, and we don't need to, just kind of take the first people who show some interest because there's just so much of it. But rather, yeah, focused on who's in this for the long haul, who really wants to do this and is, willing to just like commit fully to it because they just want it that badly.
No, I like that on a lot of levels. Share the tough stuff, so that they don't find out. They're going to find out later. There's some find out eventually what it is. I think that applies to, at least to personal relationships as well. Like, just kind of share. Here's here's what you get.
Yeah.
I like that. The What kind of positions? And so it's just you doing everything. And then what positions were you hiring for?
Yeah, I think the first role was someone to run our playlisting campaigns. And the second role, to think about this. I can fast forward a little bit more. So we've got a team of 3 on playlisting, a team of 4 on TikTok and Instagram, a team of 2 on paid social media, so direct ads on Facebook and Instagram, team of 3 on the catalog side of the business, and then some miscellaneous roles in between. But coming back to actually what you said before about, showing the tough stuff, transparency is one of our core values. I would say probably the number one. And in music marketing, I think that's like a big piece and why we've thought that way is I don't want to have to sell anyone ever. I don't want to have to ever convince them. I want the work we've done. I want, the data that the things that we've created, that should do the selling, right? I shouldn't have to explain stuff or unexplain stuff or convince someone to work from all these different kind of ways of thinking of it. So we take a very, very transparent approach to hiring, to our services, to everything. we'll talk to a client who says, "Hey, I'd like to put, X amount of money towards this TikTok campaign." And we'll very straight up say, you should not do that. Or playlisting, hey, that's a bad idea in this case. We'll turn down money left, right, and center because it just doesn't make sense. Because ultimately, if we're not servicing them or we're not serving them something that we believe in or something that is of value, based on what we know, it's gonna end up hurting us in the end. This isn't even a personal this is just more of a business thing than anything. It's just we know that it's gonna come back, and I don't have the energy to deal with that when it does come back. So I'd rather just deal with it up front.
Talk about the label side. So I could see the marketing side, you have the independent, you have the kind of the larger enterprise labels, but then you have a catalog and labels. How do you determine what kind of bands or independents you take on as far as the label catalog goes?
Yeah, that's been a huge thing for us in the last year. Um, we think, I mean, they are quite separate. So, we might get a ton of different music from great artists on the marketing side who are independent, and the catalog team may never hear that music. And we hope to bridge that gap. But our focus on the music side, has been taking the marketing services that we've created and finding the most lucrative ones in there. And some examples, we build playlists for some of our clients. So we'll actually run the ads to build the playlist from scratch for them. And we've had a lot of success with that. So we found ways to build our own playlists and acquire music that works on those playlists and just kind of keep building it from there. Um, yeah, we want to get a lot more involved in more traditional music, but I'd say our focus has been on the more functional side of things. So lo-fi and ambient type stuff and all these more like purpose-driven things, which makes sense for us
What
as a
are
bit
people
not coming
using
from
that
music.
for, like the purpose driven? Like, are they promoted to like yoga, people who are yoga fanatics or things like that? Or what are they using?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the ambient and lo-fi stuff, a lot of study, sleep, yoga, meditation, massage, therapists, you name it. And even on we think about music as kind of servicing some or adding something to your day as opposed to, oh, look at this song. It's no, look at this song that you can use while you do X, Y, Z. That's a big part of our marketing. And so even if it's, a popular dance song, it's like, all right, well, what purpose is that serving? Is it a good driving song, a good workout song? Like, where does that actually fit? And then how do we build a community around this more purpose or this need that we're trying to fulfill, opposed to look at me, I'm an artist, be a fan of me, if that makes sense.
Totally. It was a random, actually interview I did with a guy who I don't know the science behind it. Dalton, maybe you do, but he was the founder of Whole Tones, and it was music therapy. It was at a certain frequency. Again, I don't know. It was like that sounds like a similar kind of genre, and it was very popular. I don't know how many they sold, but since it was functional, like you said, it was serving a purpose for people from like a healing perspective. So that was super interesting. It sounds like that. How do you choose that type of, song or you know, musician or band when it comes to that type of music?
Good question. And I may not even be the right guy to answer that. We have head of our catalog, his name's Ian, great musician. He's had a great year for this stuff. So he is involved in, I think, 100% of the music that we're acquiring or signing. So that's been a big piece too, is, everyone that works for us, even though 95% have never worked in the music industry before, they all love music. And that's I'd say an essential piece of joining the team is, you got to have an ear for music, not necessarily be, this hardcore critic, but you got to be willing to say whether you like or don't like something and maybe be able to explain it a little bit. And Ian's as good as it gets with that stuff.
So what about resources or mentors? So it could be like obviously you had a mentor from like business perspective, or maybe it's a distant mentor, maybe a book or someone that you've learned from that you don't know personally.
That's a good question. I've always kind of steered clear of the whole mentor communication or the way I just that verbiage of, but I mean, I did have, I worked directly for someone, obviously at my last company, and they were a huge mentor for me for many years. Uh, I wouldn't have called it that. They were my boss, but I learned a lot. Um, Outside of that, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of great books like that have like helped and turning points for me in my life. Atomic Habits was a big one.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's a really good one. Any others that you
Hitmakers
like?
has been Hitmakers has been great, more so for like the music and just the way we think about music specifically, and
Hmm.
just the science of popularity and all that. Dr. Cialdini's influence, that was a
Hmm.
good one many
That's one
years
of my
ago.
favorites. I love that one.
Yeah, I think about that one often. Um, yeah, those are the biggest ones that stick out in my mind for
Yeah.
books.
No, thanks for sharing that. Those are all good ones. The I have one last question, Dalton. Before I ask it, I want to point people to check out members.media to learn more. If you know someone in the music industry, send this to them. Um, you know, I'd love to hear which bands, labels do you want to work with that you haven't? Who are some of your favorites out there?
That's a good question. Uh, it's funny when we got started when we started like doing this and working with some bigger names. I got to work with some of like my favorite artists and like directly with because a lot of music marketing or a lot of just the industry in general is you're working with the label or the manager or another agency and you're never actually connecting with the artist, which is fine. But yeah, we got to like connect with some and it wasn't what I thought it would be. I was excited about it and it never lived up to the expectations. So I actually haven't thought about it in that way in some time. I almost prefer keeping it a little bit separate. I listen to a lot of indie folk, indie rock type. I mean, I listen to a ton of different stuff, but I've never felt like, oh, I'd love to do some marketing for this person before. It just feels different to me. It's like I'd prefer
Hmm.
to just like stay a fan. And yeah, I don't know. So I don't know if that's a great answer or
No,
not, but
I just figured, it's interesting because at least for like let's say a product or software or something, I mean, just a huge fan of. I just want to like tell everyone, and basically you're telling everyone at scale through through your services. You're like, hey, we could tell 10,000 people or whatever it is. So I just was curious some of your favorites in different genres.
yeah. I mean, it's like to be honest, I think a big goal of ours is to just get closer to the music too. So less about who we're working with and more so just working closer with them. So Max is a great example. He came to Vancouver. We went to a show, we got to meet him, hang out for a while. And it was just nice, to be able to connect with something that you're so involved in. Whereas a lot of what we do is quite disconnected, as I mentioned, working with the labels or the managers or just team members who are handling all of the marketing or the business decisions for that artist. So for us, it's more so would I love to work with some of my favorite artists? Definitely. But would I want it to be with that artist and not with their team? Absolutely. I'd love to get, invested not only emotionally into it. I think that would be a lot of fun. Some of my favorite names right now, Damian Rice, huge fan, Ben Howard, Dermot Kennedy, Bears Den, Alan Raymond. Kind of in that space, I'd say would be my exciting stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing because people work so hard on their craft and their craft may not be marketing, right? And so that's where you come in. I remember I had Greg Roulette on, I was talking before we hit record, who had opened for Bone Thugs and Harmony at one point, and he had a band. He was just trying to get traction, just learn marketing, and then he realized, okay, I think I'm just going to follow this marketing path and not the music path. And we need people like you to just help amplify the hard work of all these artists. So thanks for what you do. I want to encourage people to check out members.media and check out more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Dalton, thanks so much.
Thank you as well. Thanks, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.